I can prove that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So the last time we proved that two triangles were congruent. Today, I'm not asking that we prove two triangles are congruent. Instead, I'm asking if you prove two of their corresponding parts are. But the interesting way we're going to do this is this. The way we're going to show that two corresponding parts between these triangles are congruent is just to prove that the triangles themselves are congruent. Because if they are, well then, so are their matching parts. Again, show that the triangles are identical twins, and you know each of their matching parts are identical too. That's our goal. So let's go ahead and see what we can do. We're going to go ahead and take that proof, and we're going to put it all the way down here at the end. It's the very last thing. There it is. And what's the reason why those two parts are congruent? This is a real fancy way of saying it, but the corresponding parts, the matching parts, inside congruent triangles, well, they have to be congruent, don't they? And that's all this is saying. If we first prove the triangles are congruent on this line right here, then you know their matching parts are too. That's what this says. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles, they have to be congruent too. So we need to first prove that the triangles are congruent. Triangle something is going to be congruent to triangle something. And it looks like we're going to do that by angle side angle. I'm giving you the reasons filled in. Well, I can pretend those aren't there, and I'm going to go ahead and follow my steps. Step 1, mark up my diagram. Let me see. I know that segment QP, for example, is congruent to segment QP. The reason there is going to be reflexive property. What else can I mark up? I don't see anything else there. So I'm going to go back over to my given, and I see for my given that segment QP bisects angle Q. Okay, here's QP, and it bisects this angle Q. So these angles must be congruent. The reason I can put that there was this word here, bisects. That's the definition of a bisector. Cross that out. I used it. Turns out the segment QP is also perpendicular to segment AN. That's what's going to happen here. Should have done that in pink. The reason I was able to put that marking there, definition of perpendicular. Two things are 90 degrees if they're perpendicular, and segment QP and segment AN are perpendicular. So this will be the definition of perpendicular. Okay, I've got my 3 markings. I'm going to put my dots down on anything that doesn't have a mark. I'm going to stay away from these. Can't go over 2 in a row. So I have an angle, a side, and an angle. So I'm going to go ahead and indeed prove it by angle, side, angle. All right. So I put my markings, all my annotations down, identified the minimal conditions group, angle, side, angle that I'm going to use. Steps 1 and 2 are done. Step 3, go ahead and write the given first, and step 4, the prove last. Well, let's take our given. We have to state all these things first before we can refer to them. Here I go. Segment QP bisects angle Q, segment QP is perpendicular to segment AN. You could write it all as just one big long thing, but I'm splitting it into 2 statements. So this part here, again, is my given. I introduced that first. The very last part down here, that's the thesis. And everything in between will be my evidence. So, we now need to prove the angle, the side, and the angle congruent pairs. So, what is my organization going to be here? I'd like to go in this order. I actually don't have to prove them in this order. I just have to prove all 3 pairs, but I prefer to prove them in this order. So I'm going to go single arc, single tick, and then this right angle symbol. single arc, single tick, and the right angle symbol. It's going to help me organize my thinking. That is an angle, a side, and an angle. I prove all three. I've proven all three. So let me see. The single arc, that is going to be angle AQP is congruent to angle NQP. Watch your order. Notice I chose the top triangle as triangle 1 and the bottom triangle as triangle 2, so I have to keep that order as I go. Triangle 1 to triangle 2. Now the reason for that, mark right there, was the definition of a bisector. You'd write it in right here. The next marking is a single tick. So segment QP is congruent to segment QP. The reason is the reflexive property. There it goes. Everything in blue just goes here in my reasons. All the pink markings go over here as my statements. Finally, keeping with triangle 1 to triangle 2, this mark here, that would be angle APQ is congruent to angle NPQ. The reason is definition of perpendicular. So, I proved the angle, the side, and the angle. Good to go. I know my triangles are congruent, specifically which triangles. How about AQP is congruent to triangle NQP. And because I showed that the two triangles are congruent, what do I know about their parts? Yeah, they're congruent too. And we're done. Stick with your 5 steps, and you'll be fine. Good luck.